Hey guys, my name is Jason with Mount Baker Mining and Metals, and on today's video, I'm going to give you an introduction to my new gold mine. Well, it's about 1st of July, and the snow actually hasn't melted off the road yet to get into the mine. So I'm hiking in today, and I'm just going to kind of check things out. But what I really want to do is I want to walk through the workings, make sure everything's good and secure. And I got a couple guys coming up this season a little bit later. So I wanted to give a kind of video introduction to them and all you guys, as well as I'm going to tell you the story of the only death that was ever recorded in this mining district. But now I've got about a 3-mile walk to get down into the mine. We made it to the mine, and so we're sitting in what's called the blacksmith shop or the steel shop. And back behind me there, back in the old days in the 20s when this mine was still operational, this was where they sharpened the steel, bent the rail, did all their steel work. So that's why it's called that, but it's right at the portal of the mine. And before I show you guys too much more around, the first thing I want to talk about is lights. So you guys have been on me about lights. My lighting underground is not very good. So I'm going to try this new thing. I got this Milwaukee floodlight deal. I don't know if this is going to work, but it's a little battery powered thing, shines light in 360 degrees. So hopefully that works. And when I'm filming, it's really hard for me to tell if the lighting is good or not, so be sure to leave me a comment. Let me know if this thing works or if it doesn't, because I really can't tell when I'm shooting. Also, if you guys are interested in this thing, I'll leave a link in the description below so you can check it out. So I'm just going to give you the grand tour here, show you everything. Here's the portal. The road comes up here. The water out of the portal is coming out. I've got a little trail coming up here into the blacksmith shop portal. Once you step inside, it's a pretty good sized room in here, maybe 15 by 20 across. And so this is going to be a really good place for us to kind of set up shop, store equipment and tools, come out and stay out of the weather, but to get out of the mine. One of the first things we're going to have to do is clean up all this rail, all this junk in here. We're going to have to muck it all out. Here's the old forge, I think. We're going to have to get that out of there. And just kind of clean it up, get it scraped down to a good floor, maybe put a little bit of gravel down, I'm not sure. When you walk over here, you got the rail going into the main portal, so that goes underground. I've got it all blocked off. And another thing we're going to have to do is secure this a little bit better, put up a little guardrail. What I'd really like to do is be able to use this as a little loading area. So you can come out here and you can back the truck like right there once we get it brushed out. So make a little ramp or platform out there where you can get stuff out into the truck. But again, we got to have guardrails and some timber flooring and stuff. So we got that. The other thing we're gonna have to do is come in and scale this back down, this roof. I'm gonna switch between miner speak and normal person talk. But the roof or the ceiling of a mine is called the back. And this thing has been sitting here for 125 years and hardly anything has come down. I mean, there's no big rocks or anything sitting on the ground. But we'll scale it down, get it all secure, make sure nothing's hanging over our head while we're working in here. The other thing we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to timber up a portal here and get this a little more secure so we can open it, work in there and close it and lock it up. Right now that goofy little thing is good at keeping people out, but it's not very easy to get in and out of if you're going to be working. A couple other things to notice. I'm not sure if we're going to use the old rail, so we might have to take the rail out. It doesn't go very far back in there before you lose it. This steel pipe here is their old air line, so that's got to come out. This black plastic pipe is the water line, and this actually still works. So I think we can get this set up and reused it. It's got to be hung kind of up out of the way. And if we do want to try going a rail system, we've got some rail here, but not very much. I think there's some down at the landing as well on the road, but I'm not sure if we want to go rail or pull all the rail out and just put gravel down or, dig a drainage ditch over on the right side. Miners call it a piss ditch, and try and get the water running down the side, and then we can have kind of a dry area to work. The mine makes a ton of water. It's making a bunch of water right now, As you can see, it's a little stream coming out of here. This dries way up as the snow melts off, so we won't have as much water here in a month or two when we come in and start working. We can usually get in about the 1st of August. But yeah, and then in reference to the back again, I don't know if just scaling down is going to work. We might have to come in and put in some bolts and some wire to hold up the ceiling here, depending on what it looks like when we're all done and set up. Hopefully this light works. I got her on. I think the camera can pick up the floodlight pretty good. I just came through my little barrier there. So we're inside the first little portal. The back is pretty short. It's maybe only about 5 feet high, but there's a ton of wood and stuff. We got to get all mucked out of here. I'm just going to talk my way through as we walk through this. This haulage way is about 600 feet long, back up to a raise. You can see the rails aren't in great shape. So if we want to pull them out, it wouldn't be a big deal to do that. A lot of water, the ground's kind of soft and mucky. But we'll just work our way back here. There's a fork up here about 30 feet in front of us. And this is all through wall rock, country rock. This is a metamorphosed slate. And right at this fork, we have the vein where they intersected the vein. I hope you guys can see. All right, there's the vein. I think I can point with that light. Yeah, that works pretty good. So there's the vein. There's the quartz vein. And on this level, this quartz vein didn't produce very well. There's not a lot of gold in this section of the vein. We are going to go this way, which is west. This way back east goes out to the surface again, but we're going to have to block that off. So we're going to timber that off, and that way we don't have to worry about anybody going back there, and we don't have to get it all up to snuff. Piles of wood and junk, we got to get those out of here. But from now until about the next 300 feet, we follow the vein. They went up on it in a couple little places, hoping to see some more mineralization, but they never did find anything good down on this level. And so the next 300 feet, they follow the vein, and then about 200, 250 feet after that, they wander around to that raise. Here's another section where, they went way up on it, trying to make something happen. But all the assays down here are less than 1/10 of an ounce a ton. There's a section here where it looks like the vein either split or it was a little wider. There's the hanging wall right there. There's the footwall right there. So there's a 3.5 foot wide vein. They did a little exploratory drift on it. It goes back there again about 20 or 30 feet. We're going to close that up as well. We don't need to muck all this stuff out, I don't think. But the interesting part, I mentioned just earlier, the vein splits. So there's where we just came from, and there's the vein on the wall. And then above it, about 6 or 8 feet, there's a big old chunk of vein. So the vein splits here, and you'll see it in some other places in the mine. And my theory is that one vein, I guess you could call it 2 veins or a split, whatever, the uppermost vein carries the values, because there's some samples back there, assays we took, that are starting to show some value. They get up to 1/4 ounce, whereas this lower vein doesn't show anything. Like I said, less than 1/10. And you'll see different spots as we go here. There's one coming up around the corner as well. where the vein, there's two distinct vein layers. Another area where they went up on trying to find something. This is an interesting spot. If the vein really does split here, and it's hard to tell when you get into these old workings, but there's some vein there, a big chunk of waste, and then more vein up there. And the upper vein goes down here into this hole. There's a winze here. A winze is where they mined down, so they followed the vein down in this section. And there's the lower vein that they didn't chase. So they chased this upper vein down, which if you've ever heard of miners chasing the vein down, it's much, much harder to do that. And so they must have had some indication here that there was some interesting stuff in this upper section of the vein. So they winzed down there, and then back over there where we just were, they drifted a little bit on that upper section of the vein. So that's my theory. That upper vein holds the values, the lower vein does not. But let me get set up. I want to tell you a little story about this winze here. So I want to tell you a little story here. This is a true story. This was the only death ever recorded in this mining district, and it ended up being a murder. So what they did is when they first started mining this property, in the first couple of years, they would hire people to stay up over the winter while they couldn't work because of the snow. And they would stop production about November, and then they'd come back in April or so. And so they would hire people to come. They could take as much gold as they wanted out of the mine, but they had to stay here over the winter to make sure nobody came in and stole their gold, claimed, jumped, all that kind of stuff. So one year, they hired 2 guys to come up, and they stayed over the winter. When they came back in April or May, they only found 1 guy. And they asked what happened to the other guy. He said, oh, a couple weeks ago he went out hunting and never came back. So when the miners heard that, they went out and did a search party, spent a couple days looking for him. They didn't find any evidence of him, so they assumed that he had died in some accident. So they came back to the mine, started working. That guy, the guy that was left, had a bunch of gold and took his gold and took off, thanked the miners, and went on his way. This winze, when they started pumping out this winze here behind me, they found that guy's body with a big rock tied around his neck. And by the time they found the body, the other guy was long gone. He had gone somewhere else and they never did find him. So every time I walk past this spot, I always kind of get a little bit of weird tingly stuff going on. I'm getting goosebumps right now just telling the story. So, but that's the only death ever recorded in the district, and so I thought I'd share that story with you. Well, we're going to continue on here, and this is where it gets a little bit wet. So I got to kind of rock hop across here. Sorry for the wiggly camera. But see, this is an area where we got to do something because it's not very easy to work in here in 8 or 10 inches of water. So I don't know if we bring in some muck and fill this in, or if we try and dig out downstream and drain it. I'm not quite sure. But looking back, there's where the winze was, obviously, and there's a section of vein right here. You can see it real nice up there at the back of that little raise. And so again, I think if you drilled into that wall about 8 or 10 feet, you'd hit the second vein. They chose to follow the first lower vein or northernmost vein, and I think they missed the one with all the pay. But that's for later. We're going to decide that later. So our first goal this year is to get in here, get this haulage way up to snuff, get it so we can work in here. We got a lot of cleanup to do, a lot of rehab to do. But it's not a bad haulage way. And this is where we're going to start bringing out all of our muck from the stope up above. Now you can hear in the distance maybe there's some rushing water. We're coming up on a raise. And that raise actually does go up to the surface. And I want you to remember this raise later when we get up in the stope, because I'm going to reference it. It makes a lot of water down that raise. Again, the snow is melting off, so it's making a lot more water than normal. But here's a raise that goes up to the surface. It goes up there about 60, 80 feet. And we're going to try and come across from the stope and intersect this raise and send our muck down this way, where we can build a little ore hopper here, and then with carts or wheelbarrows or something, we'll work our way back out to the blacksmith shop. So we have about 40 or 50 feet worth of development work to do up in the stope. I'll talk about that a little later. But as soon as we hit this, it's going to save us about 800 feet of distance that we don't have to hand muck. So this is also deep water. Guess I'm going to have wet feet going back. So we need to muck out. There's a pile of muck blocking the haulage way right there, and it's backed up all this water. So we got to get that out of there. Oh yeah, it's deep and it's sludgy. Quick little hopping and skip through there. Okay, now this is pretty good. This is about a 6 foot tall back. The ribs are in good shape. I'm not quite sure why all of a sudden it turned into a really nice haulage way. They may have started back in the day, they may have got mechanical equipment in here and they stopped using hand steel. A lot of times you'll see that. But this section is pretty darn good. A few rocks to move out of the way, obviously. But we can get this rehabbed real easy. So, we're coming up to another intersection. Here's the raise this way that goes up to the stope. And there's another drift back there that wanders its way back, never really produced anything. So we're going to end up blocking this drift off with some timber. So that's out of commission and nobody can get back there. But until we intersect that other raise that we just saw, everything going into the stope or out of the stope has to come down here. And you can't quite see, I gotta climb up there and get around that corner. But my thinking is we'll get this timbered up, we'll have a chute on the left so we can slide stuff up and down, we'll have a manway on the right with some ladders, and then we can access the stope a lot easier. Before I go up that raise, I'll go back here and show you another cool little thing and tell you another story. This was, back here was the powder magazine back in the 20s. That's where they stored all their explosives. And if you notice, that for a long time there hasn't been any tracks in here. But you can see where they were, where the timbers laid down in there. So there was tracks back here at one time. And what happened was, in the 1930s, after the mine had been shut down for about 10 years, there was a group of Boy Scouts that had come up. They were exploring the mine. And they saw all this green ooze coming out of the portal. And what it was, is there was boxes and boxes and boxes of dynamite stored here in this powder magazine. and all the nitroglycerin was leaking out of it. And they reported to the Forest Service, and the Forest Service came up and blew it all up. And that's why all these walls are nice and fresh. It looks like there was a huge blast back here. There's black on the walls. And when they detonated it, all the gases from that detonation ripped down 600 feet towards the blacksmith shop, and it ripped all the rail off the floor and wadded it up at that first intersection. So I don't know if you remember, but there was all that wood and all that debris and stuff right at that first intersection. That is a lot of the track and the timbers, the sleepers, I think you call them maybe, for the old mine rail. And it wasn't until the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, someone came in with a cutting torch and cut that huge big rat's nest worth of steel and track out of there so you could get back in here. But for about 60 years, 50, 60 years, you couldn't get back in here because of that water rail right at that first intersection. So anyway, another fun little historical story about the mine. But now let's get up that raise. I just climbed up the raise. It's only about 25 feet, so it's not that far. So we don't have a huge timber job to do, but it sure is wet. So once we get it timbered up here, again about 25 feet, we're at it's called like a transfer tunnel. So it connects the raise to the stope. So about 75 feet down this way, we will intersect the stope, and then that's when it really gets fun and exciting as far as the work we have to do. These are kind of interesting. These are the old wooden tracks where they would put down pieces of wood and then usually a steel slat on top because rail was expensive. And so they would kind of cheat sometimes. There's that steel slat right there. And that's where the ore cart wheels would run on. So we get up over here. A lot of this plastic stuff, again, is the water line and air line from old operations. And then this is where, if you look up, there's the stope right around there. And there's another transfer where all this water's coming down right there. So we can timber a little chute coming right from there down here into a little bin. And then we can transfer the stuff back to the raise, down the raise, and all the way out to the blacksmith shop. So that's how we're gonna have to do it until we punch through the stope to that first raise we looked at, making all the water. Get through here. Here's a section we're gonna have to block off. It's starting to kind of slough down in there. I don't know if this light's working. So that'll be blocked off. This is looking up into the stope there. Now we're up at the stope. If you look down there, that's where I was just standing. And that's where we'll have to drop our material, muck, tools, everything down, come up and down from there for a little while. We've got some stalling we got to do here. These are these old stalls. We'll have to get this kind of rehabbed a little bit to where we can access our drop point. Again, some more spots where the rock's kind of hanging down. But I can stand up here, and once you get kind of around this corner, it opens up. I think you can see back in there. Opens up into the stope. And that's when things get a little bit easier, because now it's a straight shot all the way down there to where I want to start working. But we can't have this big stope open. So all along these tracks, kind of right where my beam's pointing, we're going to have to put timbers up and block off this upper stope, because it's not an active part of the mine. Same thing over here. We'll just have to stull all the way across there, block it off, and that way we don't have to worry about rehabbing the whole stope. We can just focus on our little haulage way here. This is where there's some track, some rail. Again, it might be worth trying to reuse or rehab. There's the vein. The old miners stacked a bunch of muck along here because it's a lot easier to just stack it underground than carry it out. There's a beautiful stacked muck wall there. And we'll just get our little haulage way all taken care of here. Won't have to worry about any of that stuff over there. But here is the area I would like to work. This is a section that's very rich. And my plan is, let me get set up here and then I'll tell you what my plan is. So I want to take a minute and talk a little bit about the geology here, where we're at, and what our overall plan is. This section of the vein is really rich. It assays between 2 and 3 ounces a ton. And if you notice, when we were down below, the vein was dipping about 30 to 40 degrees up. And the rest of the stope, if you could see anything up in the stope, it was dipping up 25 degrees. This section of the vein is flat. So it's a flat-lying vein right in here. And a lot of times, what you'll have, let's see if I can do this with my hands, is you'll have the veins oriented like this with my arm up and arm down, and there's a flat spot, and it's a bend in the vein. And as that fault opens up or moves, I'm going to exaggerate this, but it opens like this, and you get a really rich pocket in that twist of the vein or where the vein changes directions. And all the goodies from this vein system can work their way right down into that pocket and solidify. And I think that's one of the reasons why this is such a rich section of the vein. So this is where I really want to exploit this section. And it just so happens that about 25 feet farther this way, which is east behind me, will intersect that raise that I showed you down in the lower section of the haulage wave, down, that first raise that was making all that water. So my plan is we're going to punch through here about 25 feet. We're going to intersect a fault, and I didn't mention that before, but that fault is, that raise goes right up that fault. So we're going to intersect that fault, and then we're going to turn to the north, and I'm going to follow that fault until it intersects the raise. At that point, it's less than 50 feet of work, so it's it's not that much work, right? So once we intersect that raise, then we'll have access right down to the main haulage way, really easy and quick. We won't have to go all the way back, the 300 feet to the transfer way, down across to the raise, down through to the main haulage way, back out. It's going to be way, way more simple. And for the first 25 or 30 feet, we're going to be in ore. So we can be making ore while we're developing this. It's called, I've always heard it called an eye drift. When you do just a little, it's going to be about 4 feet wide, 6 feet tall. You can see here the vein's about 3.5 or 4 feet wide right here. And so we can just drift on that vein. We might split shoot it where you take a shot of the vein first and then you take the rest that's waste, and we'll stack the waste underground here somewhere out of the way, just like the old timers did it. But we're going to drift in here, intersect that raise, and then once you've done that, then we've opened up a section of the vein where we can start stoping up on it, and we can kind of take advantage of our high grade and the gravity working with us, so we can take our eye drift, and on this north rib of the eye drift, this north wall of the eye drift, we're going to start stoping up, leaving pillars, and then we can slush all that muck down to this eye drift, send it down to the main haulageway and out to the blacksmith shop. So that, in a nutshell, is what I hope to accomplish this season. It's usually about the 1st of August to somewhere in the middle of October, so we have somewhere between 80 and 100 days usually to work in this mine. We got to wait for the snow to melt off, and then it starts snowing again mid-October. The start of the process is going to be a lot of rehab work. As you saw, we got a lot of work to do, a lot of timber work to do, some bolting probably, some mucking, just getting the workings in a situation where we can actually do our work down here. And then once we get the water line here, the air line here, then we can start drifting on this vein and making some muck. There's a section right here that comes across the vein, comes across right over here, and it looks like it makes a straight line right across the vein. That is the good stuff. That stuff is running huge amounts of gold. This is kind of where everything was concentrated, right in this band, right along here. I'm going to try clipping my little microscope on my camera so we can see right up close on that vein. I don't know if this is going to work, but this thing is really cool. I've talked about it in a lot of my other videos. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check it out. So here we're cruising right around that section of the vein, and there's the piece of gold. There's another piece of gold. It's right, oh, there's another piece of gold. It's right in that flat band there. I'm not sure if I can get focused. The vein's not a smooth surface, but I think there's a couple pieces of gold down there. Oh yeah, come on, focus. There's some more gold back up there. So there's some nice gold moving across that flat spot. There's some gold, there's some gold. Even though I'd like to scoop out just this little section, there's some more. Man, look at that. The whole vein has gold in it, so we're just going to take the whole thing, but I wanted to show you kind of the high grade section. So pretty good stuff. Well, this is that section I was just showing you with the microscope, and there's so much gold in it. I brought a hammer and chisel. I got a real hammer this time, so I'm going to try and get some of this out, but I want to show you how hard this is. This is not just knock it off real casual. This is hard stuff. So let me work in here a little bit and see if I can get some of this gold out of here. Whoop. Oh, check this out. I got this good piece. Look at that, right through the honey hole there. Oh yeah, that's a good piece there. Look at that. You can't see anything, can you? That's a good piece. I might have to take that home and cut that one up. I got a bunch of really good looking stuff off that face. I've got some more of the fines over there on my sweatshirt. And yeah, I'm done for the day, and I've got to pack all this stuff out 3 miles up the road as well. So, but one more thing I wanted to show you here. I don't know if you can see, that might be a little bit better. That's all ore. So there's a couple tons of ore just sitting on the ground that we can muck right away before we even start drilling and blasting on the vein. I'm going to end this video here. This is going to be kind of the introduction video to my mining season. So stay tuned for a lot more videos to come. I'm gonna film everything, hopefully get it all on YouTube so you guys can see this. And I'm really excited to start this kind of new adventure for the channel and have you all come along with me. If you'd like to support us, we have a Patreon page. That will really help. You can find the link below. So I just want to say thanks again to everybody, all the viewers out there. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you'll enjoy a lot more cool content that we're going to bring to the platform. And yeah, stay tuned for more. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.